Hello, I'm Paul. Welcome to episode 19 of Letters from Balconius Maximus. Today's episode is Paul McCartney. Have I told you I like Paul McCartney? Well, it's very possible that I may have asked that question, and today it seems like a really good time to address that question, so I would like to do so. And the best way I can do so is begin by telling you a story. The story begins Sunday, February 9, 1964. I was 5.5 years young at the time. I was in the second semester of my kindergarten year. And I remember it was a cold Sunday night, snow on the ground, and it gets dark up in Iowa in the evenings in the wintertime, really early. But this night was different because I remember my older sister being really excited about some entertainment act that was going to be on the Ed Sullivan Show. I didn't know what was going on, so I tuned in as well. What I remember went on to change my life and the life of so many people across the planet. Because here were these four young guys with long hair singing these songs. And it was amazing to see that one of them, the one that I would consider the most handsome of the group, just happened to be named Paul. Well, at that time I only knew of two Pauls, myself and at the time Pope Paul VI. So here was this smiling guy singing, "Close your eyes and I'll kiss you, tomorrow I'll miss you." And I mean, it was just really beautiful. And it was happy, and making a long story short there, it was the first time in my life that I ever danced. And I also remember the next day that I went to school and everybody was talking about this group of four young men they had seen on TV the night before. I mean, everybody. People from all age levels. At the time the school I was in was kindergarten to 6th grade, and everybody was talking about it, even the school teachers. It was really fascinating. And so it was a memorable time, definitely. And it wasn't long after that that Dad brought home the first U.S. release that the Beatles made, called Meet the Beatles, which was different from the With the Beatles album that was released in the UK. Had the same picture, different title, different track listing. And that was okay because I liked the songs a lot. Like everybody, played it until the record could be played no more. And that was the beginning of what I could not have known would be a very long, wonderful journey. I remember hearing various songs then throughout the next 6-7 years, in particular the famous song "Yesterday." I remember hearing "Baby You Can Drive My Car," and the songs that of course always struck me, being a fan of rock and roll, were I should say "Helter Skelter," "Back in the USSR," "Birthday," "Lady Madonna," "Get Back." All of those were written by Paul McCartney, even though I did not know it at the time. And then after the Beatles broke up, then it was a question of, well, where are we going? And so, I mean, I think everybody wondered what was going to happen with the Beatles after they broke up. Well, we didn't have to wait too long to find the answer, because Paul released his first solo album, which had the big hit "Maybe I'm Amazed" on it, and followed that up with Ram, that had Uncle Albert on there. Great song. Love that Uncle Albert. Hands across the water, water. And great stuff there. And then, of course, his big chart buster, Band on the Run, which had so many great songs. It has so many great songs on it. While Band on the Run and Jet were the big ones, along with Let Me Roll It, I liked Hell on Wheels. Heard it on the radio a time or two, but not as much as I would have liked. And as the 70s were coming to a close, the record by Paul that really struck me was the album Back to the Egg. I really like that one, and I would say right now that that is my favorite. And of course, Ringo had his famous Photograph album. John did his stuff, and so did George. They all had their varying degrees of success. But I even remember a time when the Beatles would come on the radio and just turned it off. It was like overkill. I was burnt out on them. And the 80s didn't do anything to ingratiate me to the Fabs. We lost John, and then just nothing really happened until Paul started touring again in 1989 and 90 and released his live CD, Trippin' the Live Fantastic. And it was, okay, good, Paul's back at it again now. And I'll have to admit, I was really looking forward to seeing Paul when he came to San Antonio in 1993, but I didn't have the money to see him then. So I said, well, I'll see him next year. Well, next year turned out to be 12 years later. It was in 2005. And my dear friends, that's where it all began. Because I saw Paul McCartney. I flew up to see him on Saturday night in Detroit. It was October 15, 2005. It was his second night of a two-night run at the Palace of Auburn Hills. And even though I was in the nosebleed section off to the side, it felt like I was in the best seat of the house. I cannot begin to describe to you how it felt like. At that time, 42 and a half years of dreams just came true. My heart was just flooded with, I don't know, I still have a lack of words for it, as you can tell. And I really didn't know what to make of it, but all I know is that day changed my life. And I've just been a big Paul McCartney fan ever since. Now, granted, I'm like so many. I would estimate his fan base to be conservatively between 500 million and 1.5 billion people on this planet. That's a pretty big fan base. And since that time, I have had the good fortune to see Paul 4 more times. So I've seen him a total of 5 times. The most phenomenal was to see him on my birthday. Piedmont Park, Atlanta, Georgia. August 15, 2009. Now, you know my birthday, but I wasn't born in 2009. It was just phenomenal. And I remember when Paul played my song, I saw her standing there. It was just electrifying. It was more powerful than when I danced the first time in that living room in Iowa back in 1964, so long ago. And since then, I have gone in to discover that he has done so much in terms of his releases, the music that he's made, and just the honors bestowed upon the man. He's met so many kings and queens and prime ministers and premiers and you name it. He's been in so many awards, including being knighted by the Queen of England. So his credentials are very impressive. In fact, I dare say the Guinness Book of World Records cannot keep track of all his accomplishments because he has done so many things, written so many songs. And now when you see him live, with the exception of 2, maybe 3 songs that he does in tribute to his former bandmates, everything that he performs, he wrote. And they're all million sellers, if not multi-platinum. I mean, it's just incredible. And at age 72, he still puts on an incredible show. That's one of the reasons I'm making this video, is because today is Sunday, the 29th of September, 2014, and on Wednesday, October 1st, he's going to be here in San Antonio at the Tobin Center. It's a benefit concert, and I just don't have the money to go. Tickets range from $1,000 to $3,500, and I just don't have that kind of money. So I guess this go around, Sir Paul's is going to have to miss me. With that said, there are a few things I would like to share. Yes, I love Paul McCartney dearly. Hear that, Paul? I love you dearly, man. By the same token, not everything Paul does turns to gold. First of all, from 2009 to 2012, during his song Sing the Changes, he'd show pictures of President Obama, and he even tried to say that Obama was a symbol of change and hope for the United States. I noticed that regardless of whether a person accepts that line of Paul's or not, the response was not overwhelming, Paul. It was not. And I'm glad you finally dropped that out from your list of songs. Another thing was that Paul mentioned one time that he was the political Beatle. That was in the Huffington Post, January 14, 2009. And I don't know, there may be a degree of truth to that. I would just say, Paul, you'd be better off referring to yourself more as a diplomat, an ambassador of goodwill, rather than being political. And finally, no, I don't like every song Paul McCartney's made, but he has one of the most vast libraries of music that he's made. He's just an incredible composer. He'll leave this earth with probably 7 LP projects in the works. I mean, who knows? But he's just so prolific. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, the Guinness Book of World Records does list him as the most successfully prolific songwriter of all time. He is rock music's first billionaire, of that I'm pretty sure. And so I could go on and talk about Paul. There's just a few other things I'd like to share to conclude. And the first of which is, there has been, over the years, this business about Paul is dead. Well, and people cite all these different hidden clues in various Beatle albums and songs and stuff like that. Well, to me, it's all rendered moot by a simple test. Assuming the people who would believe that Paul was killed in that automobile accident, all a person needs to do is take a recording of when the real Paul was allegedly alive, and then compare that to the voice print of Paul afterwards, whether it was from, say, the White Album, or from the Band on the Run album, or his newest album called New. And if the voice prints match, there you go. So all this running around looking at clues and stuff like that is just completely irrelevant and missing the point. So my answer to that is, Paul is not dead. To quote the title of his 1993 live CD, Paul is live. To wind things up, I'm just one of countless millions who would love to meet Paul McCartney, shake his hand, say hello, and get a picture taken with him, get an autograph, of course. I would like to do that. I'm not holding my breath. I would say that I think that he or his public relations office could have acknowledged the letter I sent when I showed a picture of this beautiful quilt that I had made of Paul McCartney t-shirts. And it's an incredible quilt, and the picture was incredible. And even if I didn't get anything from Paul directly, the PR office at least could have said, "Hi Paul, I'm glad that you're a fan, thank you for the picture, thanks for the support, keep on rocking, have a great life." So, signed sincerely, the Paul McCartney Public Relations Department. Didn't even get that for all my efforts, golly gee. So, again, I guess that just puts things into perspective. He's not perfect. He's human like everybody else. But the one thing I would like to say to Paul, and I'm saying it to you now, Paul, is I just want to thank you because you have inspired me so much. For 50 years plus, you have given me the music that has been the soundtrack, it is the soundtrack of my life. You continue to inspire me by selling out wherever you go, or virtually selling out wherever you go, 50,000, 60,000 seat stadiums. And you're doing this at age 72. And some people say, yeah, your voice isn't what it used to be. To them, too bad, because I think, again, what you're doing is inspiring. And at my age, I need all the inspiration I can get, and I'm not that old. I am young at heart. And I think you are too, and that's what keeps me going. So I want to say thank you for inspiring me. I say keep up the good work. And I also want to conclude by saying that Paul says it well in his song The End of the End, which is on the album Memory Almost Full, when he mentions, on the day that I die, I'd like songs to be sung and bells to be rung. In other words, he's saying, don't mourn. And that makes a lot of sense. And in case I do outlive you, I will be sure to honor your request, Paul. So, sign off by saying, sorry you're going to miss me. I'm still holding out hope for that miracle ticket, but I'm not holding my breath. You're going to be so close here in San Antonio, but so far away. So, I'll just say that I love Paul McCartney. I often ask the question, have I told you I love Paul McCartney? Well, there was to end, there's a quote from the San Antonio Express News that was in reference to Paul McCartney coming to Austin in May of 2013, and not a direct quote, but this is close. It says, the man currently playing in Texas, called Paul McCartney, is the biggest personality on the planet. There is no one bigger than Paul McCartney. It's quite a compliment. Well, deservedly so. Great compliment for a great musician and a great guy. So, thank you, Paul. And until next time, keep speaking those words of wisdom and let it be. That's all for now. We gotta go home. Thanks, Paul. Bye-bye.